everyone, and welcome to this session. This is the AACOSE Brain Trust session. We're so happy to have you here. We're so excited to have you join this session with us. Just to introduce myself, my name is Ruth. I work at the Ashoka East Africa office, and I will be moderating this session with Martin. So what we're doing this session is we've brought together a panel of recognized leaders who are drawn from different organizations, and these organizations address different challenges. And what we're going to do is we're going to have them give us their insight and strategic advice to share their opinions to the participants and those who are watching on this call. And what we're trying to do, or the aim of this session, is basically to connect these social entrepreneurs and other interested parties with experts who are well positioned to help them decode their challenges and share practical steps towards finding solutions and solving the challenges that we experience basically every day. What we're doing is we're creating a safe space conversation. It's a two-way conversation that we're going to be having with the panelists. And I will be guiding this discussion with the help of Martin. And we're just going to really understand the aspect of collaboration. How can social entrepreneurs collaborate with other key players in the ecosystem and vice versa, especially when it comes to international non-government, when it comes to businesses and private sectors, when it comes to government. So this is going to be a really interesting discussion. And I'm so glad that you could all join us. And I would like to just give you a breakdown of what the session is going to look like. We're going to have the panelists introduce themselves and introduce their organizations, tell us a little bit about themselves. And then we're going to deep dive into the conversation with a few questions that came in previously, really understanding this whole aspect of collaboration. And then we're going to be opening it up to all of you. So I'd like to encourage you to please write in the chat any questions that you have, any comments, any feedback. We would really love to hear it. Our experts are really interested in also hearing from your point of view and answering any questions that you may have. I would now like to pass it on to Martin to introduce himself and to take it on from here.
Hello, everyone who is here and also those who are watching. Glad to finally meet you all, meet you. Martin Wehoti. I'm going to co-moderate with Ruth in this session. I work at L'Oreal East Africa, a supply chain officer attached to flows and warehousing and logistics. But today we are going to focus on entrepreneurship, especially collaboration and we are going to have a guided conversation as introduced by Ruth with our panelists. And I'm looking forward to having a good discussion with everyone. Back to you, Ruth.
You're on mute, Ruth.
Ruth, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I would now like to pass it on to the panelists to give them a chance to introduce themselves and to talk about their work and talk about just a little bit of how social entrepreneurs should view collaboration before we go into the broader topic. So how we're going to do this is we will have Georg go first, followed by Caroline, and then Wamuyu. Welcome.
Thank you, Ruth. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be part of this panel and really looking forward to our discussion. I'm working for Ashoka. I'm the country director of a small country in Europe, Austria, and I'm based in Vienna from lockdown here. And I'm also leading our fellowship work at a European level. So Ashoka is a global support organization. I think you all know about it, for social entrepreneurs. We exist since 40 years and have built a network of more than 3,800 leading social entrepreneurs around the world. And we do basically everywhere the same. We headhunt and support social entrepreneurs to unleash their impact potential and we build markets or ecosystems for social entrepreneurship to drive that movement. And we believe that somewhere in the future, everyone can be a change maker. Everyone in our society should be enabled to contribute to change. So why I'm in here and why is the topic important for us? I'm here because I'm lucky to work with my colleagues in Africa since a couple of years together to build bridges between the European and African social entrepreneurship movement. And I'm here because partnerships is, of course, core to everything that we do and also to my own trajectory. I started as a social entrepreneur myself, worked for many years in Mexico, Central America, and Austria on human rights. And then I was lucky to switch side. I worked for the UN, for UNDP in the Balkans, experienced what it means to work with ministries and other public stakeholders and to shape national frameworks. Then I worked on a multilateral level in the Black Sea region and in the Mediterranean region, also on green entrepreneurship for UN agencies. Then I came back to Ashoka, to my home, to social entrepreneurship, where I now was able to work for many years to build those markets, to work with social entrepreneurs, and specifically to work with corporate partnerships. I know that's not why I'm here today, but that's where Ashoka is rooted. We are rooted in partnerships with the private sector. We are actually don't take funding from public agencies or only in exceptions. So that really drives us to build partnerships with the corporate sector. And because of my passion in development, I kind of started to get engaged in this and work with international NGOs to build bridges between social entrepreneurship and their own work. So what's my stake or initial statement on collaborations? I always like to quote and famous Indian social entrepreneur, Cheru Pilimoria, who says, social entrepreneurship is a family party. Invite everyone. And why should we invite everyone? And that's the African proverb that I bring in, because it needs a village to raise a child. It needs a village to move social entrepreneurs and social innovations ahead. And in this village, in this ecosystem, there are so many different roles. And certainly international development NGOs play a very specific role. They gained a lot of power, even more power in the last 10 and 15 years, increased their budgets globally, became a leading actor in development, and are a very important resource to bridge international development aid with local setups. And that's for social entrepreneurs, they're a key partner. And I think underlying on these statements are two insights. First, social entrepreneurship is not for social entrepreneurs only anymore. Social entrepreneurship is a mindset, it's an approach, it's a way of looking at the world, it's a strategy that can be applied by everyone in that village, by every actor. So it's for everyone. And second, the market of for social entrepreneurs can be built. There is supply and demand. There are areas where there are more supporters, more allies, and there are areas where there are less supporters and less allies. And we can navigate that, we can steer that, we can efficiently and deliberately build that village together and match supply and demand. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you, Georg. I'd like to now pass it on to Caroline.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Super excited to be here and to both share our learnings and also to hear more about the rest of the panel and also the other social entrepreneurs and your thoughts. So I'm Caroline Cedillov. I am Swedish, sitting in the Swedish experiment these days with sort of half lockdown recommendation, no rules here. So I'm actually in the office today, sitting on my own here with the social distancing, but happy to be socially on board here instead. So I'm the co-founder of Social Initiative. It's a not-for-profit organization that I founded together with my partner Pernilla Bard back in 2002. And I have a background from international development. So I worked in Zambia for the World Health Organization. And then for the World Bank on various social programs and projects in Latin America, in Asia, and in both East Africa and West Africa. And there I worked a lot on impact measurements and developing systems for measuring impact. And that's also where I was lucky enough to come in contact with social entrepreneurs and working closely with social entrepreneurs locally. And then I was also part of establishing the Global Fund to fight HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. But so back to Social Initiative and why we started this. My partner has a background from business instead. So she has been working for EF, which is a Swedish international language firm, sending students around the world to learn language. And then she was part of establishing Coca-Cola in Sweden. And then just before we started Social Initiative, she was working as a management consultant at Boston Consulting Group. So what we did back in 2002 was really to bring these two quite different experiences and thinking around how can we use these two different approaches? How can we use these two different sectors to use the best in both to have a greater positive impact on society? And what we wanted to do was really to tear down the walls that were there at that time, where the private sector, the corporate, did not really meet the civil society or NGOs or social entrepreneurs and vice versa. So we wanted to tear down those walls and open up for an exchange and for learning so that we could collaboratively have a positive impact on society. So that's really where we come from. And what we also did was we sort of turned fundraising around. So instead of going fundraising for a specific cause to different corporates, we instead decided that we would start in the corporate end. So what that means is that we start with looking at the corporate and what the corporate business is doing and aligning their what we call CSR, corporate social responsibility or social engagement, with that business so that there is a logic. And then we go out and do a search and selection and a very careful due diligence to find the best social entrepreneur to partner with, so that there is a logic on both ends. So aligning the sort of CSR strategy with and the engagement with the corporate values and the corporate business, the core business of the corporate. And just to give you an example of what that could mean, is we work, for example, with Fagerhult, which is a Swedish international lighting company. And so they produce light that we have in our offices, in our H&M stores, in hospitals and schools, etc. And so what would be, and they are a multinational company, so they have production and subsidiaries in all of Europe, in Asia, in South Africa, and elsewhere. And so to align with their core business, we decided that bringing light is what they do as a core business. So in their social engagement, that would make sense to have also light as a focus area. So after a careful due diligence and search and selection, we ended up recommending a collaboration and establishing a collaboration with a social entrepreneur in Tanzania called Solar Sister, providing solar light to the last mile in the villages in Tanzania. So again, there is a logic, there is a match between the two. And so what we do for the social entrepreneurs is that we provide grant funding in combination with strategic advice. And very often the strategic advice, or a central part rather than in our strategic advice, is measuring impact and developing tools for measuring impact. And so through this sort of three-party collaboration with the corporates, with the social entrepreneurs, and with social initiative, that's how we together can join hands in developing a better future. And I think that one of the reasons why this conversation is important, I think, is that no one can do it on their own. We do need to join hands. And I think the SDG framework, the Sustainable Development Goal framework, is a really good framework for this, because for the first time it's setting down its foot and defining the essentials about collaboration. We all need to do this together. There is no party that can alone solve the challenges of the world. So we need to work together, civil society, social entrepreneurs, the corporate world, governments, etc. That's the only way we can have a better future. So thank you. I'm super excited to hear more from everybody who's participating.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Let me pass it to Wamuyu.
Hello, everybody. I'm also super excited. I'll use the same words everybody has used to be here with you this morning, actually this afternoon. And I am an Ashoka Fellow. I mean, as Georg was explaining that we have 3,800 fellows in the world. I'm one of those. And I was recognized because of the work that I was doing with youth in Kenya. I as a social entrepreneur, I believed that every young person who is not employed can employ themselves. And therefore, I embarked on training young people in entrepreneurship so that they could start their own enterprises and employ themselves and employ other youth. And I did that for several years. Then along the way, I realized that we were very many of us, and we kept on increasing. We had when I started the Youth Ban organization, then we were like 3-4 organizations. Then within a short time, we had so many other organizations doing exactly the same thing, not same methodology, but all trying to do the same thing. Youth are unemployed. Youth need jobs. So what can we do? Let's teach them how to start their own enterprise. Let's help them scale up what they have. Then I stepped back and I said, no. As a social entrepreneur, I need to be filling the gap. The gap in this case is not getting people together to train youth. The gap here is in bringing all these thoughts together so that we make the impact that we should make as a community that is supporting young people. So I started the Collaborative Value Partners Africa, which is an organization that is bringing different social entrepreneurs, private sector organizations, and even government together to innovate together, so that at the end of the day, we are saying, we don't have to do this alone. We can do this just like everybody else has said here. We can do this together. So what Collaborative Value Partners is doing is coming up with a 6-step methodology of how this happens. And we're looking at defining the problem together, because we know the problem, but sometimes we don't understand it the same. So are we understanding the problem as it really is? So together we define the problem. Then we jointly innovate. So I understand one aspect of youth employment or youth unemployment. Another person is more maybe engaged in the skills, upskilling and so on. The other one is looking at soft skills, whatever the challenges are for youth. Let's come together, innovate together. And then after that, we sit together and look for any other partner that's missing in that partnership. And at the end of it, we are able to say we have every aspect or gap met by the partnership. Let's move this forward. And it's working. In fact, just recently, when the collaborative value partners put together a webinar asking people to come and understand how to bridge silos, we had over 200 participants in the seminar. People want to learn how to bridge silos and work together in collaboration. So that's what we're doing. And having come from a background where I'm on the ground implementing and having challenges around finding the right partners, it makes a lot of sense, first of all, for us to have a conference like this where we're saying, guys, let's collaborate. Then we're also saying, in this same ecosystem, we have organizations like collaborative value partners that can help you put these things together. In case you want to do it and you don't know how to do it, there are people who can help you do it. And then thirdly, as we begin to think together and being innovative together and saying everybody can be a change maker, we're looking at a situation where the impact we put together becomes, should I say, we hopefully will reach the peak that we need to reach. Because if you think about, for example, Kenya, we have been talking about the challenges of youth employment for the last many years. And sometimes when I look back, because it's the space I'm in, I wonder whether I'm seeing any change. I wonder whether they're great, what are we doing differently? Are we changing anything? Are we going around in circles? Are we not meeting the real needs? What is it? And therefore, I am convinced that the minute we start now focusing on collaboration, we'll get it right. I am convinced that we'll get it right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wamuyu. Thank you so much, Caroline and Georg. I love that the core message that is coming out is you cannot do it alone. And literally it takes a village to raise a child. So thank you, Georg, for sharing that. And with that being said, I would just like to really just be specific, right? And I'm asking this to Georg, and there's a new program that's coming into East Africa, the Visionary Program. And it's been run successfully in Austria with Georg and his team. And I think I'd really be interested because how it came together is a collaboration between CARE Austria and ADA and Ashoka to build this common purpose and design and launch the program. So I think would be really interested in knowing how did you come together and how was that process? How did you work together to achieve and run such a successful program?
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Let me start maybe with a brief reflection on the Visionary Program, because that was the birthplace for our collaboration. I founded the Visionary Program 6-7 years ago. And the idea for the Visionary Program kind of derived from a pain. Most entrepreneurial ventures come because you feel a pain in something and want to overcome it. So my pain was that I was working for this incredible global organization, the long-standing social entrepreneurship organization in the field globally that coined the term, with 4,000 fellows, thousands of partners, an incredible global ecosystem. But in average, it took you like 2-3 years to understand where you are in, to navigate that ecosystem, to make the connections that you need to move forward, and to tap into this global know-how. And that's why we created the Visionary Program, to organize a one-stop shop, a fast track into this global universe of Ashoka. And deliberately, it was not organized like a classical incubator or accelerator. It has 3 visions and perspectives. The first one is that it's a cutting-edge leadership program into this global know-how and practice, where fellows from all over the world are the key lecturers. So it's a very non-scientific, practical approach and leadership journey for everyone. Second, it's not just for social entrepreneurs, it's for kind of everyone that is part of this ecosystem. It's people for people from ministries, from NGOs, from funders, philanthropic organizations, to develop that social entrepreneurial mindset and to understand what their role could be in that ecosystem. Third, it's kind of a co-creation lab, because when you bring people together over a while that are so diverse and so different, and that's the unique and the magic about it, then naturally you create projects together. But even, I think, more important than the projects and collaborations that emerge is that this develops to be a community of trust. And I think before anything can emerge, you need to build trust. You need to find a common language, because we all talk different languages wherever we come from. Languages in terms of understanding each other. When we talk, we use a lot of jargon. We have different backgrounds, and it takes a while. And that's why we created the Visionary program. It successfully operates in Europe, in the Mediterranean. Now with you and Bamuyu and others, we brought it to Africa. So it's a really becomes a global opportunity. And that's how it started, actually, with the Austrian Development Agency, because we, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, social entrepreneurship is fresh. International agencies are just taking up the topic. I'm super happy that the International Development Innovation Alliance was created. It's kind of a big club of all the big funders out there in development that come together to reflect how they can invest to stimulate innovations and ecosystems for innovations. So, but at that time, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was still fresher, and the Austrian Development Agency wanted to embrace social entrepreneurship. So we worked with them, we helped them to integrate social entrepreneurship into the program, to start a funding scheme for social entrepreneurs, etc. But we also identified a key target group that we need to get on board. And that were social entrepreneurs from development agencies, from development NGOs. So there are working people that have a social entrepreneurial mindset within larger organizations, and the discourse is very similar to the corporate one, Caroline. So it's basically the same at the end of the day, I think, with similar approaches. So we identified within the key big international development NGOs in Austria that have global reach, and that are daughter companies of bigger conglomerates of those NGOs. And we identified those people that want to drive the agenda within the organization. So we got a colleague from CARE, from SOS International Children's Village, from the Red Cross, and others in the process. And in the process, we developed a joint vision, and there was this social entrepreneur from CARE Austria that said, yeah, we need to work on the topic. It's really important for us, because we face challenges, but we also have opportunities ahead of us. And together with social entrepreneurs, we can become stronger. So that's how the journey started. Out of this 9-month program to build the trust, to develop a shared understanding and a vision and a purpose and an idea, and then to get it basically together with important partners like the Austrian Development Agency and PwC as a corporate partner as well, to launch it. And that's how it started, very organically. Yeah.
Thank you, Georg. And I just want to follow up with another question, just so that I don't lose that trail of thought, right? The way you've explained, finding the different partners who you would be collaborating with and working with through this journey, it's an impactful work, but it's a difficult one, and it can be a long one. So why is collaboration important? Why does it matter for Ashoka?
Maybe let me connect it to the discussions that we had with the international NGOs, because that's a little bit the hat that I'm wearing, though I'm also fresh in that field. When we developed when we brought all those social entrepreneurs from these big NGOs into a joint trust building process, we had several side sessions to understand together what's the value proposition that big NGOs have, when partnering with social entrepreneurs, and what is the value proposition of social entrepreneurs to team up with big international NGOs, and what is the opportunity that we have ahead. I'm happy to talk later more about the barriers as well, but I think that that's how it started, to develop a joint perspective of why you should work together. So the international NGOs, they bring a lot of great assets on the table. They have fundraising and program power. They have in-depth expertise in a lot of different areas. They have delivery power at scale that hardly any social entrepreneur can reach. And they are globally connected and can maneuver and navigate this international development architecture that's for grassroots social entrepreneurs very hard. And social entrepreneurs bring innovative solutions to the table. They are fast, agile, and can adapt quickly. So my friends from the NGO world usually say, we are the big tankers, and the social entrepreneurs are the speedboats. So we need to bring this together. So when we discussed, we kind of found three core value propositions or approaches where we come together to build partnerships. One was around the replication and the scale up of solutions of social entrepreneurs or experiences of social entrepreneurs and expertise of social entrepreneurs in the field. So it's a lot about replicating and transferring and co-creating solutions. The second one was around fundraising. Fundraising, the international fundraising architecture is changing as well. So everyone needs to react. So social entrepreneurs that are innovative, bring great ideas, are incredible asset to build new programs and to fundraise at scale that big NGOs can move forward. And third, they were very interested simply in the expertise of social entrepreneurs. So I think there is a big, opportunity here to see social entrepreneurs not just from the lens of solutions, but from the lens of experts. Because usually what we understand as experts in the international development field is very technocratical, very, very linearly developed know-how. And I think we also need to reframe what experts are and to put social entrepreneurs out there as a global hub for expertise to innovate and simply maybe paradigm shift aspects of development is an incredible asset that NGOs have recognized in all the discussions that I had. Maybe I stop now.
Yeah. Thank you, Georg. Thank you so much for also making it very practical with the example of the Visionary Program and your discussions with various key players in the ecosystem. And I'd also now like to ask Caroline a question, and it's in relation to social initiative and the fact that you work with, both social entrepreneurs and also private companies. And I'd be really interested in knowing if you've experienced any challenges during the process of bringing them together and closing the partnerships. And like I had said to go, it's a process and it's not perfect. And sometimes there are challenges in that journey. And if you have seen these, how can they be avoided when collaborating with a player from another sector?
Thank you, Ruth. Yes, there are absolutely challenges. In some ways, I read a book many years ago with the heading that women are from Mars and or Venus and men are from Mars or something, right? It's a little bit the same sometimes with the social entrepreneurs and the corporates. And that's where we quite often find a key role for social initiative to be the translator, that in a way, when you come together from two different experiences, two different mindsets to a certain way, to different ways, to different glasses on how you view the world, etc. It's not always easy to understand each other. And what we notice is that the, the communication goes like this sometimes. So that is, I think, a challenge. How do you communicate with each other? What do you mean with using the same? If you talk about results, what do you mean by results? In the corporate world, results, it's very linear, it's very easy. You look at the bottom line and you see if you made a profit or not, simplifying things a little bit, but still. And if you're on the social entrepreneurial side and you want to have an impact on society, that's your result. And how do you measure that? So I think language is one challenge. And I think another challenge is also when we enter a new partnership with a corporate body on the one hand, a social entrepreneur on the other hand, it's, to use the same word again, there's a lot of super excitement. But also we have noticed that there is an exaggerated belief, sometimes from both parties, on especially what the corporate world can bring into the collaboration. The corporate world certainly does not sit on a holy grail. They do not have the answers to all the questions. And sometimes that's a challenge to understand from both parties. So sometimes we've had corporates who come in and think that they have all the answers, and they come into the collaboration thinking that now they will help and make everything fantastic, and not recognizing that they actually enter a partnership with a really competent partner on the other side, who has experience and know-how of how things work in the field, and experience and know-how about that particular challenge, be it in terms of spreading light to the last mile community in Tanzania, or be it spreading IT knowledge to women in the slums of Nairobi or whatever. So I think that, and also sometimes the other way around as well, that sometimes the social entrepreneur has too high expectations as well as to what the corporate can bring on board. So that's, I think, sometimes a challenge. And yeah, those two are, I think, are the major challenges. And then thirdly, I think there's a challenge of just finding each other. There are no arenas such as this one, for example, or other seminars and webinars these days, where, for example, philanthropists and social entrepreneurs come together, where impact investors and social entrepreneurs come together. But there are no such arenas for meetings naturally between social entrepreneurs and corporates. So those are, I think, some of the challenges.
Great, thank you for sharing those challenges, Caroline. And I would just like to pick on one that you had said, which I think it's something that might not be thought about, which is, coming into the collaboration without recognizing the other partner's experience and what they're able to do, what they're able to bring to the table. So how do you normally manage that?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I think setting expectations right from the very beginning is key. And of course, then there's an attitude in terms of, from both parties, I think from the social entrepreneur side, to be very, very clear about what they know and their experience and what they have also achieved in terms of creating impact already. So setting that stage and being self-conscious and bold in terms of really recognizing what you have achieved as a social entrepreneur and what you know, and a bit of and a lot of openness from the corporate, also recognizing that you have a really professional partner on the other side that you as a corporate can and should also learn from. But then I think a key is to be very clear and open about what this collaboration is about. So what, apart from what you each bring to the table, also clearly set from the beginning some joint goals. What is this? What do you expect this collaboration to lead to on both ends? And be as concrete as possible around this. And ideally, at the end of this collaboration or after X number of months or years, this is where we hope to get to together. And identifying, ideally, you know, KPIs and some milestones along the way, and then have a agree on that journey and have a set of not only the goals clearly laid out and the milestones, but also the journey. How should we go about to agree on how much time does each party have for this? And what is it that you bring to the table? What is the need of the social entrepreneur? And what is it that the corporate can actually contribute with? So you don't, because sometimes what happens also is that you start the end of the corporate and they say, well, we can contribute with all of this. Oh, fantastic. But maybe the social entrepreneur doesn't really have that specific need. So that's, again, I think also coming back to the ideal partnership in a similar area. So for example, we worked with a recruiting firm in Sweden, recruiting engineers, and that's their core business. And when we established their collaboration and social engagement, we linked them. They are only based in Sweden, so the Swedish focus was clear here. We linked them together with a social entrepreneur called Jobbentrén. It's, if I translate it directly, it's entry to jobs. And they work particularly with newly arrived immigrants in Sweden, getting them into the job market. And so there it is quite clear, but on both ends, we could agree that, well, for the corporate, they wanted to learn more about this group of potential employees. And for the social entrepreneur, they wanted to broaden their network of corporates and collaborations where they could actually help the newly arrived and immigrants to get connected to the job market. And then we established over the course of a year to begin with, how and when should we meet? What are the expected outcome at the end of this? And what are the milestones? So I think being concrete is a takeaway.
Great, thank you. And for, I know that we might have a mixture of participants or those watching from YouTube. It's not just social entrepreneurs here, and some of your work at the social initiative, is to tailor social engagement for businesses. So for organizations represented here who are interested in exploring social engagement, what advice can you give them? How can private companies add social innovation to their core business or their strategy?
Sorry, so your question was how the corporates could add value to social entrepreneurs?
How they can add social innovation to the core of their business or their strategy.
I think that being open-minded and listening to the experiences and ideally taking active part in the collaboration with your employees, that's a very good way of learning from the social entrepreneur. And then I know there are other programs, we don't work with that, but where you can have, in a similar way to the program, George, that you described with international NGOs, there are other, I know that AACOSE Sweden, for example, works with collaborations with corporates and social entrepreneurs to really co-create And then it's much more towards creating new solutions together. We don't particularly work with that, but I think just opening up for the collaboration between the social entrepreneur and the corporate and engaging the employees actively in terms of providing their know-how also from their own experiences. So you don't, what has been historically happening is, for example, you have bankers coming to a home for homeless painting with rarely with a very good outcome. So finding, the core skills on each side and where you can really jointly contribute with your core skills to both, from both entities to both entities. I think that's the key.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I'd now like to ask Wamuyu. I know we've been having a lot of conversations on collaboration between social entrepreneurs and the non-governmental organizations and the business and the private sector, but I know there's some people here who might be interested in learning about how they can collaborate with the government. So Wamuyu, as a social entrepreneur, have you had a chance to work with or collaborate with a government entity?
Yes, sure. More than once, actually. And it's interesting that collaborating with government is not a straightforward affair. I'm sure not just in Kenya, but in any part of the world. Because when you think about government collaboration, even before I come to how I have collaborated with them, there are different kinds of collaboration with government. One of them is government driven. I mean, every government, whether it's county or national government, has got its agenda for a year or for the season that the leaders are on board, and they have something or things that they want to accomplish in that period. So some of those collaborations would come from or to fulfill those agendas that are time-based, government-based, and so on. And a lot of those agendas are based on what the current should I say people in government want, what they want their people to see. I mean, for example, if you're thinking, if you want to be re-elected, if you're being elected for a second term, for example, and you know that in your country the biggest problem is, for example, food supply or sustainability of this and the other, or in this case, youth unemployment, which is one of the key areas in Kenya, you have to be talking about it, and your projects have to be on youth employment. Otherwise, it will be that you're not interested in what is happening, in that season. So that's one of the drivers of government collaboration. The other driver is a partner driven. We have development partners that are interested in working in certain regions. Like in Kenya, we have quite a number of development partners. We have other governments. We have the foundations. We have quite a number of other partners that come and say, we want to work with Kenya. MasterCard wants to work with Kenya. USAID wants to work with Kenya. And therefore, they propose solutions to problems that they are aware of. And in a lot of cases, when it comes to development partners, they have done good research. So even as they come to bring solutions, they're bringing solutions based on sound research that they've done, and therefore, their solutions are very solid. And you can, as a social entrepreneur, that is another opportunity to partner with government, because you can be part of that collaboration between development partner and government, and even private sector, depending on how that looks like. The other opportunity for collaboration with government is emergencies, like the pandemic that we have right now. The government never planned to have a pandemic. It was not on the agenda. It was not on their budget. But because it has come, then that solution must be met. Or if floods have come, they have to be sorted. And you find that in such a situation, then other collaborations, the opportunity for collaboration with government. Having said that, and looking at a social entrepreneur as because our discussion today is on social entrepreneurs. Social entrepreneurs are recognized as people with solutions, in the sense that I find that when I sit at a table, because let me talk about myself as a social entrepreneur, I am looked upon as that person with homegrown solution, especially when at the table we have a development partner who is from from Austria or from the US. I have homegrown solutions. So I'm looked at as a social entrepreneur who understands what's happening on the ground and therefore able to give that kind of solution. I'm also understood as a person who wants to see impact, because I'm not going to be there as a social entrepreneur. I have a collaboration with whoever for 2-3 years. And at the end of the day, I'm still left in that country and I can't show anything, or I cannot show why I was in that collaboration. So that's the other important thing for a social entrepreneur. You want to see impact. You also want to, social entrepreneurs are also able to articulate because of their entrepreneurial mindset. They can articulate issues, articulate problems, and are able therefore to come to the table and bring that to the fore. Now, let me give you now an example of a situation or a collaboration that I was personally involved in. This was a collaboration with the government, in fact, very specifically the ICT authority, to support enterprises nationally of social other small businesses. Actually, they are social entrepreneurs managing ICT centers in 47 counties, and these ICT centers were building eco platforms for community, should I say, promoting community goods and so on and so forth. So our role in that partnership was therefore to capacity building, business development support to this, they're called Pasha centers. Now, before getting there, because this was a government-driven collaboration, it went through procurement. It was advertised in the newspaper, and a million people, however many people who felt they were able to applied for that. And a lot of social entrepreneurs, we get scared of this process because first of all, it's very elaborate. The documents that we need to fill are like 30 pages. So you look at that as a social entrepreneur, you're like, I can't deal with this, So it's scary. But what I can say is that having gone through that process and having brought in those skills that I knew that collaboration needed, I was shortlisted. And in fact, when we were shortlisted, one of the persons I met asked me, how much did you bribe the team to shortlist you? They didn't believe that we could get shortlisted genuinely, but we were. And we were not only shortlisted, but we actually got the job. We supported those Pasha centers for 3 years. And Deloitte, who should I say, were doing the M&E to managing the monitoring and evaluation of the program, were very happy with the work we did because we understood the problems better than and articulated the issues better than other organizations that were not homegrown in the sense that we were. So looking at even the 6-step process that collaborative value partners started, we have been actually using the steps that we have learned through this collaboration. So when it comes to government, and we're looking at, for example, defining the problem, sometimes the government already knows the problem. Sometimes they want you to define the problem with other partners and also now identify among yourselves who is doing what. They don't want to get into all that detail. But when it comes to the actual innovation and how it's being driven, it has to be politically aligned. I mean, let's not cheat ourselves. We cannot have a government initiative that's not politically aligned. What is the government of the day thinking about? In Kenya, we have the four big agenda, So whatever you're doing must be one of those four. Otherwise, what are we saying? Because that's what the government wants to accomplish. You have to be aligned to that to be able to work with them and for you to fulfill their objectives, even as you fulfill your own. The other part of that is the duration of the initiative. If, for example, in our current situation, the current government completes their term next year. If I'm proposing a project today that ends in 2025, which is so many years after this team has left, it might not see that it might not be accepted, not because it's not a good idea, but because the results of what I'm proposing come post the time this team is on board. So you have to keep that in mind. That unfortunately, it means that it could be short-term. It's a short-term solution, but ideally, what this means is that if you want to partner with government, partner with them at the beginning of their term, so that you have 5 years in which to propose a project or a solution, and you have 5 years in which to show the results and still be within the team that has given you that work. And of course, when it comes to other parts of the engagement, which is our step number 4, which is defining partner engagement, the government role is very clear. One is that they must be present in all public settings. when we launch the project, they want to be at the launch, of course, because then they're part of this launch and they want the rest of the country to know that they are involved in the solution of youth in this country. That's the solution, or agriculture or whatever it is. So they like to be involved in launches. And they also like to be involved in recognitions, any kind of recognition that might be part of this initiative. But in exchange, when the government is happy with the solution that you're proposing, they bring about what we say, they make the environment, conducive environment for working. And this could mean anything depending on what your project is. In my particular situation, conducive environment was having doors open in every county I went, because the project was in 45 counties. So I had access to all the government offices. I had access to officers if I needed even to be taken to a place that I didn't know. And I had access to other partners that are already working with government. So that's a conducive environment, and it's great. And in some cases, then a conducive environment also entailed when we were training, getting government facilities to. We didn't pay for those facilities because they're government facilities. We're part of the government initiative, and we were able to use those facilities for training without paying. So those are the kind of things that government is able to bring to the fold and to ensure that the collaboration that you have with them is making sense. So the other part of that is in the success, measuring success. Government is happy when a project is successful, and much as most of the, should I say, reporting, I mean, the actual research to find out what the success rate is done by one of the partners in the collaboration. They're very happy to have the report, and they're very happy also to launch that report publicly, and to say this partnership was a success, and as a result of that success, we were able to it's on media, it's on everywhere, and in some cases, if you're good at lobbying, which I can say I am, I was able to have even in the counties, the governors coming to the functions and being part of that, and therefore bringing in the rest of the community in their areas. And at national government, having the minister at the time coming into either launch or close meetings or appreciate the results of the initiative that we did together with them. So I think that kind of explains, I don't know, Ruth, whether there's anything I've left out that is of importance in terms of that partnership with government.
No, I think you've really elaborately explained, and I think you've been given hope to some social entrepreneurs that might be out there and wondering, it's such a long process. How can I even start the conversation? So I think the one last thing that I'd want to get from you, Wamuyu, is for those out there who are scared, to take that first step, all those documents that you are going to fill. And then, there's that whole aspect of do I have to bribe? Do I need to know someone? What words of encouragement can you give them to just, go out there and do it? Because you can't do it alone. And the government is such an important entity, and they can help you, create even a much bigger impact than you could have by yourself. So what words of encouragement can you give them?
It's good you've asked that question, because I missed out one important part, and that is the muscle that comes with building a partnership that goes to government. Government doesn't want to see you as one organization. Government wants to see a consortium of several organizations. I kind of mentioned it in passing, but it's very critical, because if we have 5 organizations and we are saying government who've come to you, we have expertise in training, we have expertise in life skills, we have funding in our consortium, we have whatever you need, IT skills and whatever, the government listens and is able to build a partnership with you around that. So you don't need to go through the procurement process if you go through the route of a consortium of partners. For those scared to go through the procurement. Now, for the procurement process, you have to be ready to win or lose. It's like any other application. Even when you apply for the job, you don't get all the jobs that you apply for. Some you get, some you don't. So it's not the bribing story here. It is, are you the best person in this a particular situation? And confidence is important, because if you're confident, then you will. It will help in the sense that when you are called for interviews, or when you ask questions about your organization, or when you ask to articulate certain issues, then you answer all those questions with confidence, and that gives confidence to the person who is interviewing you and the organization that wants to take you on. But I don't want to say that corruption does not happen. It does happen, but I think sometimes we encourage it because we are looking to these officers in a way that we're saying, do you need anything from me so that you give me the job? I mean, we are the ones who encourage it. But if you're very clear that that's not the route you want to take, then you take the straight route, you get a job or you don't get it, and then you should be satisfied with the results of that process. That is my take on that.
Thank you so much, Mamuyu. I also like to thank Caroline and Georg for sharing your knowledge, your insights, giving practical examples from the work that you're doing just to help us understand how better we can go about collaborating with other key players in the system. And now I'd like to pass it on to Martin, who's just going to lead us through the next session or section.
Thank you, Ruth. Sorry for that. Power connections here sometimes they go off. But we're back for the question and answer. So I would like to request all the participants, if you have a question, you can go ahead and ask it directly on the question and answer tab, or you can go directly and ask the question. But for now, we have a question that I think has been posed to like all the panelists, and I'll go directly and read it. One is, how do we create more trusted human connections digitally and ongoing for more synergies instead of duplication? For the example, this event is great, but how can we continue this discussion after this event? And I think this question has been asked by like two people. How can this discussion continue after this? So I threw it back to all the panelists, and I think I can start with I will start with Caro.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to continue this conversation. And so I think the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn, or you find my email address on socialinitiative.se. Happy to connect to whoever and continue the discussion on that. And then I think you had a question around human interaction. Was that it, Martin?
Basically, the person was asking how can we create a more trusted human connection digitally and ongoing for more synergies instead of duplication.
Okay, the digital human interaction specifically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're all becoming extremely digital these days, right? So I think at the beginning of this term, if I may call it so, after the Swedish summer, when we got back again, we as Social Initiative had our mindset on exploring more collaborations around environment and women entrepreneurship, and wanted to attract a number of corporates to join social entrepreneurs and ourselves in having an impact on environment and also reducing poverty through female entrepreneurship. And so how do you go about making new contacts and building trust when you cannot meet? And that's something that we had not experienced before. All our business, if I may call it that, is of course, like for everybody, based on trust. Do you trust the other person to be able to provide the right collaboration? Do you trust the other person to be able to achieve the expected results and outcome? Do we like each other? I mean, it's that's the basis for all collaboration. Do we like each other? Can we get along? And how do you establish that when you cannot meet physically? So I think that that has been a journey for all of us, and I'm happy to say that from I think we have contacted 150 corporates this fall. We've had 25 meetings, which I think is a quite good good outcome when it's cold calls, when there is no introduction, no connection at all. So it's just a cold call, and you're asking for somebody to engage and commit and to have a meeting online on Zoom or on Teams. And so 25 out of those, I think, is quite successful. And I think these days, I don't think this would have been happening and would have been possible a year ago or even less than that. Because then you were expected to travel and meet physically, especially if you were to engage in a new partnership and establish a new contact. But these days we have all been forced to being much more open-minded and listening into just the screen and the person behind that screen. So I think that the world is changing, and hopefully for the better in the long run as well. I hope we don't ever go away from physical meetings, but I think if it would be good for the environment if we manage to reduce our travels a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, and that, I think that will also continue to reduce our carbon footprints. And I think, Caro, I will not let you go, because I think this question next it's directed to you. And someone asked, how do you approach? Who do you approach in a private organization for collaboration? Basically, the person is asking, which department do you go to in any organization to seek for a collaboration?
That's a very good hands-on question. So it depends on the corporate and how large the corporate is. So if it's a large corporate, I would expect them to have, and I would be looking for a sustainability manager or somebody responsible for sustainability. But if it's a smaller, under sustainability, as you know, it has both the environmental and the social aspects. But also, if it's a smaller company, they might not have a sustainability responsible person or sustainability manager. So there, I would look for who is the marketing director. And why marketing director? Well, that's because they would be concerned with building the brand of the corporate. They would be concerned about communicating their engagements, and perhaps most importantly, they would have the budget. So the marketing manager has a budget to spend on communicating the values of the corporate, communicating building the brand of the corporate. So that's where I would start the conversation. Or if it's like an entrepreneurial company, then I would go to the entrepreneur directly, or the CEO, if it's a smaller company.
Thank you. I think my next question will go to George. I think there's someone who has asked, no one maybe talked about how we can partner with the academia or the academic world. And I think, George, you can take this. And how would collaboration with the academia would look like? And in what areas or challenges would you need contribution from academic world in this multiple parties collaboration? George?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking the question. It's one of my passion topics, so happy to answer. I also want to be a bit critical here. So my experience, and I think the experience of many, is that research became an industry, is very often decoupled from action, and became a self-interest in itself. Meaning, that a lot of research, even if it's on social entrepreneurship or with social entrepreneurs, at the end only serves the purpose to write reports for funding agencies, and at the end this is dumped in a desk and not used for action. And I just came out of a really great discussion with a global foundation that invests a lot in fellowships for researchers, scholarships, and so forth. And I think it doesn't matter whether you talk with foundations like that or with research agencies at a national or international level, they all struggle because they all know that the industry that was created is not advancing the good for society and social impact as such. It's you know, in the best case, a little side effect of that. So I think the big challenge for the research industry is, and the opportunity for the social entrepreneurship sector, is to bring researchers together with social entrepreneurs. And in the best case, this doesn't happen after the researchers have done the research, but in the best case, researchers and social entrepreneurs form partnerships so that the research at the end really benefits the social entrepreneurs. And that could have two layers. One, there is a massive need to research the impact models, the business models, the pedagogical models, the operational models of social entrepreneurs, not just for the sake of research, but for the sake of replication, of collective learning, of scaling. So I think that's a massive opportunity. And the second one is to define the research questions of the future together with social entrepreneurs and practitioners in the field, and not decoupled from that. So there's a big movement in academia that that includes in a participatory way people, society, but also affected people in research groups to develop research and research questions that really meet the need. So I think for social entrepreneurship intermediaries, there is a simple opportunity and for research agencies to come together to build a bridge between the researchers and social entrepreneurs, to identify who of the social entrepreneurs need research and what type, to bring them together, give them funding so they can develop something that at the end really benefits the social entrepreneur, and then support the scale up of those analytical models that are produced. So that's just the first, answer to your question. I think there is a massive opportunity because the research industry globally is huge, and the social entrepreneurship sector is absolutely underfinanced. So there is a huge opportunity to connect those worlds in a collaborative manner with exactly the same attitudes that we discussed over the last hour.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Waiting for more questions, but as we wait for more questions, I think the same question I would like to take it to Amoyo about who to approach, especially in government, and you have given us 3 scenarios where the collaboration comes in between social entrepreneurs and the government, but I'm looking at a scenario where there's no any in the 3 criteria that you gave us, but this idea, you don't know who to approach to in the government or in the county government. Who specifically do you go to, and how can you advise maybe our viewers and a person attending who to go to, and how can they start it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. That's a very good question, because what has happened, or what happens, is that one has to do some kind of homework, because it's not always obvious who you should see. In a situation where it's a procurement and it's in the newspaper, then all that information is available, where you send your proposal and so on and so forth. But when you're building a partnership with as a consortium of, and bringing the consortium together to either a county government or a national government, depending on the area that you want to have your focus, if it's youth, agriculture, and so on, then you need to do your homework, because you need to ask yourself or find out, do I see the minister in that area? Do I see the permanent secretary, or the CS in this case? Who do I see? So and sometimes you find that you may see a third party, because there could be another partnership that's already going on in that space. And it would be good to know how that partnership is going, how, because you don't want to get into a situation that is even complicated because those there are already having challenges. So it's good to know those there, what's happening, what's their position, are they having difficulty, who are they working with, and then so there has to be some homework. It's not straightforward, and it's not the same in every case.
Thank you. I think if there are no more questions, I think I will pass it back to Ruth for the next step. Ruth, back to you.
Thank you so much, Martin. And
I think this. I think there's one question that has popped out where the last minute. I think this applies to everyone in the panel, Wamoyo, George, and Carol. I think the question is, how do you maintain your collaboration with your partners when the project is over? Can it take other forms of collaboration? And I think I'll go straight to Wamoyo, George, and then Carol.
I think I could start off and say, when you're collaborating with partners, you develop a relationship that goes beyond the work that you're doing together. So you become friends and you're able to continue talking about either the issues you're addressing or others. In fact, the current project that I'm on, I was invited by people I had worked with earlier. So they called me straight. They didn't go through procurement or anything. We had developed a relationship. They needed somebody in Kenya to do scoping for a fund that's coming to Kenya. And they called me straight and said, Wamoyo, are you available? We'd like you to help us scope for this fund. So therefore, and the reason why this happened is because I kept the relationship going. And and I kept the same contacts, I guess, which is also important because they can try to reach you and not find you because you've changed your communication details. Yeah, and it's good to also to be on social media because I find that when you're talking to people on LinkedIn and other social media platforms, they don't forget you because they may know you but forget you when that opportunity comes. But if you're out there talking, then they see you every so often and you have a discussion on some topic. When the time comes when opportunities arise, then you're remembered as a person who could. And that's vice versa. You also remember other people when they're active on social media.
George?
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent question and goes to the heart of our challenges, I think, because that's also one of the barriers that social entrepreneurs have mentioned when working with international NGOs, for example, that the funding architecture that is behind international NGOs is funding projects. They're not funding impact pathways. They're not funding outcomes or a longer term pathways to achieve certain goals and objectives, which means that many social entrepreneurs they find themselves in a long-term entrepreneurial endeavor because they want to solve a social problem. And probably that's not solved after 3 years of a project funding. So how do you achieve to overcome this short-term project funding mindset that rules still most of, I think, our funding mechanisms everywhere in the world? I think that's a challenge that goes up to higher levels when it comes to funding architecture, but it's also a big question on leadership. And I know that's Wamoyo's topic.
Yeah.
What kind of leadership do you need to create partnerships that will last longer than 3 years? What kind of awareness do you need to have to see a 3 years project as seed funding for something big, massive, for a large opportunity ahead, and not simply to stop this after 3 years? So many social entrepreneurs are frustrated if the partnership don't last beyond like a 3 years funding circle. But I think it takes the leadership from all sides to make it bigger. As you said, it needs an investment into trust. It needs a long-term entrepreneurial perspective. It requires to maybe, to also go beyond your closed organizational targets and entrepreneur more long-term visions. It might also require more shared leadership in organizations that empower their employees to go the midterm and the long term and not stop after 3 years. So I think it's also a leadership question whether projects stop after 2-3 years of funding circle, or whether they can continue, or which shape they could take. Look at projects as seed funding. You could incubate them out of organizational structures after 3 years or 4 years working together. But what does it really take to make this happen? I think this question really touches at the core of a lot of challenges that we have, and mindsets, old mindsets that are still prevailing everywhere. So we can only overcome them, I think, by cultivating a new leadership that is empowering everyone to go beyond the comfort zone, to see the big picture, to unleash the passion, and not just to implement technocratically a project. And to find your strength and what you want to devote your life for. So I think a lot of questions connected to these simple questions, but definitely must.
Yeah.
In fact, it's interesting that Georg looks like he's been reading my, I'm researching on team leadership and its impact on collaboration. And Georg is responding that he has read my research report. But it validates the research, and it validates a lot, because it means that really the research is beginning to answer that. And I hope in the next AACOSE workshop next year, conference next year, I'll be able to share those results of that research on the impact of leadership on collaboration, because I believe that it's going to be an important thing to share with other people.
Yes, I think to Caro, I remember on one of the challenges that you said you face, it's about communication. That was the hugest challenge, and then a question has been posed about how do you maintain collaboration with your partners after. So I think Caro, you can briefly give us something on this so that we can wind up on this session.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, I think it's also interesting that even though here in this session we sort of represent different angles of collaboration with governments, with international NGOs, maybe a bit of research, and with the private sector, it's this question is common across. How do you establish partnerships? And I think that goes back to the fact that we are all humans, and it's humans collaborating with each other. And how do we collaborate? Well, we collaborate through getting to know each other, building trust. And so I think, George, you mentioned beyond the 3-year period. What I see in some of the partnerships, not that we engage in, but in others, is even shorter periods. So it's like a 1 year or a one-off. And I would strongly advise going away from that, whether you're a social entrepreneur or from the corporate side or any other side. I mean, a 1 year period is a far too short time horizon to achieve impact, but more importantly, to build that connection and understanding. And so I think a 3-year is a minimum, and really nourishing your current collaborators and seeing them as partners, not as donors, but seeing them as partners and communicating with them as partners, as equal partners. And then I think, like Wamuyu is saying, then they become your friends. Maybe you don't have dinners together or go out and have a beer together, but they become your work friends, and you establish a relationship, and they are your best friends in the longer term. When I've seen some of the social entrepreneurs that we have worked with over the years, when I've seen them scale, who do they turn to? Who enables that scaling? Who are the first risk takers in that scaling? Well, it's almost always their old-time partners, because that's where they have built the trust. That's where the partners know them and believe in them. So they are your best friends, not only for now, but for the longer term also. And then just linking back to what Wamuyu said also, that it might not be after 3 years, they might you might end your collaboration for now, but that doesn't mean that you end your relationship. So how do you keep in contact? And I think, like what Moyo is saying, is great, being active on social media. But then I think going back to the very old-fashioned newsletter is an excellent way of keeping contact. That's how I keep in contact with some of the social entrepreneurs that we met with maybe 5 years ago, and we didn't, for whatever reason, establish a collaboration then. But then I keep getting the newsletters from them, and that's a way for me to be reminded. So for next time when I'm looking for a social entrepreneur in the area of water, for example, that will be the one who I'm receiving the newspaper from. That will be the one who pops up first in my mind, and I contact first.
Thank you. I think for me, thank you very much to Wamuyu, George, and Caro for tackling the question, and thank you to Johan, Jessica, and all the rest who have asked the questions. I hope all of them have been answered satisfactorily. And now I hand it back to Ruth. Ruth.
Thank you so much, Martin. And I'd just like to take this time to thank all the panelists who joined us today. Thank you, Georg, Caroline, and Wamuyu. This was really quite an interesting conversation, and I think very much needed, especially in the times that we're at. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us, either through Zoom or YouTube. Thank you for asking all your questions. You can always reach out to us if you have any that pop up later. We're always happy to answer those questions for you. And I'd also like to encourage you to also join us tomorrow, because we're going to have a day 2 session on collaboration. And tomorrow we're going to deep dive into looking at practical challenges that social entrepreneurs face and have insight from our experts on ways in which you can solve them. So thank you all so much, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.